Rose went.
I see mythology as serving four functions. The first function is what I would call the mystical function. It opens up a realization of the mystical dimension, that behind the surface phenomenology of the world, there is
a transcendent mystery source. And that is the source also within yourself. Within yourself. The second function has to do with the image of the world, what I would call the cosmological function. This changes radically from time to time. In the very early hunting and planting and gathering societies, relatively small horizon, and the science was that of what was visible in terms of the visible world. The sun rose, went down. The sun rose, went down. The sun rose, went down. And the science was that of what was visible in terms of the visible world. The sun rose, went down. With Copernicus, this all changed. The sun isn't rising. It's we that are twisted. The cosmology is totally changed. Cosmology and science changed. A mythology to be up to date and really to work in the minds of people who are living in the modern scientific world must itself incorporate the modern scientific world. Modern scientific world. The sun rose, went down. The sun rose, went down. And the science was that of what was visible in terms of the visible world. The sun rose, went down. The third function of a mythology is sociological, to validate and maintain a certain specific social order here and now of this specific society. The fourth problem is the pedagogical problem, guiding the individual harmoniously through the inevitable crises of the stages of life in his world today, in terms of its goods, its values, its dangers. The sun rose, went down. The sun rose, went down. And the science was that of what was visible in terms of the visible world. The sun rose, went down.
Where does mythology come from? For Campbell, the beginning to this story does not exist somewhere out there in the distant past. Rather, it starts right here, right now, within us, with what it means to be a human being. It's easy to see what separates us from each other, what makes us different. We all look and sound differently, and most societies have different values and customs. These are the physical and cultural distinctions that set us apart. What then are the characteristics we share in common? How are we all the same?
Akira, 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 Akira.
Alexander Solzhenitsyn, you may or may not know, was a prisoner in the Soviet Gulag concentration camp system that, by his report at least, killed 60 million people. Solzhenitsyn, he had a pretty nasty life. I mean, first of all, he's on the Russian front, which was a nasty place to be. Then he was captured by the Germans, and they didn't like Russians. So they put them in separate prisoners of war camps. Partly because Stalin, who was the consummate paranoid, wouldn't sign the Geneva Convention on the treatment of prisoners of war. So the Germans set up extra POW camps for the Russians, and they starved generally so badly that if other POWs were in the vicinity, they'd throw food packages over the wire, even though they themselves weren't particularly well fed. The war ends and the Russians win, and Solzhenitsyn goes back to Russia, right? And what happens? He's thinking, wow, this is over. We helped defend the fatherland. We're going to get, if not a hero's welcome, at least some welcome. But Stalin figured, no. These Russians who'd been to the West, they were contaminated by their exposure to the Western economic system. And as a consequence of that, they posed a threat to the integrity of the Soviet state, so he just threw them all in concentration camps. So fine. So Solzhenitsyn's sitting there in this concentration camp on a coal pile which contained this kind of clay that his compatriots would eat because they were so damn hungry that it was better to have the clay in their stomach than nothing at all. And he thought, all right, what the hell did I do to get here? What the hell did I do to get here?
What did I do to get here?
What the hell did I do to get here?
What the hell did I do to get here?
Which is really a remarkable thing to think, right? Because there was the Second World War, and that probably couldn't be pinned directly on him. And then there's Stalin, who was, really one of the world's worst monsters. And then there's the concentration camp, the POW camp. A lot of things happened to Solzhenitsyn, but he said he had nothing but time to think in this concentration camp, and he wasn't really that happy with the way things turned out. So he made a vow in the camp, and the vow was this, that he's going to go back over his whole life, right from day one, and try to remember every time he ever did something he thought was wrong. He thought, right? Not someone else, but that gave his conscience a pang. And he said, well, since I don't have anything better to do, I'm going to spend the next 10 years seeing if I can undo all those little knots in my soul that I tied. And the consequence of that was that he wrote a book called The Gulag Archipelago. 3-volume book, 1,900 pages long. He memorized it because there wasn't any paper and pencil available for him in prison. And then it circulated in the underground in the Soviet Union for years before it got published in the West, published in 1975. Definitely one of the literary events that brought down the Soviet Union. Definitely. That's kind of interesting, isn't it? Think this one guy, right, got numbers tattooed on his arm, he's as skinny as a rail, he's 3/4 dead, he's been beat to death in 15 different ways. He decides under completely unreasonable circumstances that he's going to take personal responsibility for the position that he happens to find himself in. The consequence of that 25 years later is that Solzhenitsyn is still around, but the Soviet Union isn't. What the hell did I do to get here?
What did I do to get here?
What the hell did I do to get here?
What the hell did I do to get
can't be the way the world works, now can it? But then you think this too, like, do we really know how the world works? We've had a pretty nasty century in the last 100 years, right? We had the Nazis, we had Mao Zedong, we had the recent tragedies in Africa. We don't seem to learn anything about genocide. Someone like Solzhenitsyn says, well, you know, might be your fault. Might be your fault. Why? What are you ignoring? Good question. Can you make peace with your own family? It's not so easy, right? It's probably no easier than making peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians.
Here's another didactic little story. There are these two guys sitting together in a bar in the remote Alaskan wilderness. One of the guys is religious, the other's an atheist, and the two are arguing about the existence of God with that special intensity that comes after about the fourth beer. And the atheist says, look, it's not like I don't have actual reasons for not believing in God. It's not like I haven't ever experimented with the whole God and prayer thing. Just last month, I got caught away from camp in that terrible blizzard, and I was totally lost, and I couldn't see a thing, and it was 50 below. And so I tried it. I fell to my knees in the snow and cried out, oh God, if there is a God, I'm lost in this blizzard, and I'm going to die if you don't help me. And now, in the bar, the religious guy looks at the atheist all puzzled. Well, then you must believe now, he says. After all, here you are. Alive. The atheist just rolls his eyes. No, man, all that was a couple Eskimos happened to come wandering by and they showed me the way back to camp. It's easy to run this story through a kind of standard liberal arts analysis. The exact same experience can mean two totally different things to two different people, given those people's two different belief templates and two different ways of constructing meaning from experience. Experience. Meaning from experience. Experience. Meaning from experience. 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 Meaning from experience. Because we prize tolerance and diversity of belief, nowhere in our liberal arts analysis do we want to claim that one guy's interpretation is true and the other guy's is false or bad. Which is fine, except we also never end up talking about just where these individual templates and beliefs come from, meaning where they come from inside the two guys. As if a person's most basic orientation toward the world and the meaning of his experience were somehow just hardwired, like height or shoe size, or automatically absorbed from the culture, like language. As if how we construct meaning were not actually a matter of personal, intentional choice. Plus there's the matter of arrogance. The non-religious guy is so totally certain in his dismissal of the possibility that the passing Eskimos had anything to do with his prayer for help. True, there are plenty of religious people who seem arrogantly certain of their own interpretations too. They're probably even more repulsive than atheists. At least to most of us. But religious dogmatist problem is exactly the same as the story's unbeliever. Blind certainty. A close-mindedness that amounts to an imprisonment so total that the prisoner doesn't even know he's locked up. here is that I think this is one part of what teaching me how to think is really supposed to mean. To be just a little less arrogant. To have just a little critical awareness about myself and my certainties. Because a huge percentage of stuff that I tend to be automatically certain of is, it turns out, totally wrong and deluded. I have learned this the hard way, as I predict you graduates will too. Meaning from experience. Meaning from experience. Experience. Meaning from experience. 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 Meaning from experience.
Akira. It's for the heroes.
If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. If you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good, nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken, and stoop and build them up with worn out tools. One heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginnings, and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. Hold on. Nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much. If you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it.